Start sharing my screen. All right, how does that look? Okay, with that, I see a thumbs up from our Mayor George Chen. And we'll take it from there.
Super. Thank you, Sheila, and welcome Torrance community to our Community in Action, Torrance in Action, that is. And I'm very happy to join all of you and a very happy morning. And start off with my short sharing with you about some of my visions and what we've been doing and where we're going into the future. And as your mayor, and I believe the first priority of government in Torrance as well is to maintain public safety as top priority. As I've shared in the past, if the community is not safe, nothing else really matters. We need to feel safe when we go to school, raise our kids, raise our families, go shopping, and do whatever we enjoy to do in a manner that we're confident that we are safe. So public safety will remain top priority in all that we do. In addition, many of you know that a few years ago, we had a challenge in our city, and we were down to our reserves, roughly 500K range. I'm happy to share with the community, and Sheila may get into it a little bit in the future, that our reserves went from at one time near 500K, now we're above 40 million. And that's due to all the actions that the staff has taken to make sure that we bring ourselves up in a more healthy status with the city of Torrance. As our financial health gets better, everything else gets better. And we continue to look for opportunities to bring in companies with high-paying jobs. And the reason of that, focusing on bringing companies with high-paying jobs, is as we bring in more folks and professionals in our city that gets higher pay, the folks with higher pay, higher paying jobs are more likely to be the folks that goes in the shops at our malls and our local small businesses, our restaurants. Come visit Torrance and our hotels, and that means revenue, revenue, revenue. What that means is more revenue, that's more dollars we can pay our employees, pay our staff, and then that's how we can grow. And that's how we keep our city as safe as possible, by generating revenue. Revenue provides service. So there's an old saying, it's not about the dollar, it's all about the dollar. And we are aware of that as well. And with the public safety in mind, homelessness is one of the top priorities. I see that we have PD and the FD representative with us this morning, and they know that everywhere we look, we try to help those who are in need of help, especially those who are unhoused in the streets, and we will continue to do that the best we can within the realms of the law. And we are always sensitive that we treat every person with dignity. And I really appreciate our staff, police, fire, and our homeless outreach people. We are all here to serve the community, those in need, and those who definitely need a lot of help. And we are aware this is not just a Torrance issue. We have this challenge statewide and in many cases nationwide, but we're doing our best in our 21 square miles to take care of those best we can with the resources we've been given. Business attraction, that goes along with what I just shared with you earlier, and it talks about revenue generation. We recently had some grand openings. Companies some of you may not have heard, Navitas. Navitas is a high-tech company who relocated from El Segundo to the city of Torrance. They provide high-end electronics, such as battery chargers, using technology that's very current, called gallium nitride. I know I'm sounding a little geeky here. Gallium nitride, or GaN, is a high power devices that uses very low energy. So all of us have electronic devices like the ones I'm holding up. They get smaller and smaller, and we want to be able to have effective use of all our devices with the lowest amount of energy requirement. North Italia, MB Grill, and Sweet Green. These are real example is what the Lama Mall is doing. We're bringing all these high-end restaurants, and people are just coming and flocking into the city. And what we want them to do is come and eat and come and shop. What does that mean? Revenue, revenue, revenue. And we will continue to be, we'll go on to the next slide, work on business attraction. Can we have next slide, please? The other thing we're looking at, effective, go back, yeah, effective land use with sensible development. I think our city has some areas that we are continuing to look what is the best use of our land, including even the Civic Center. We're trying to see, City of Torrance is somewhat built out, and we're continuing looking at are there areas that we could use our land even better, because that's one of the knobs that the City of Torrance can do is land use control, and we are going to look at that. And you will, many of you will see that there are some development that is happening. Recently, I think 2 weeks ago, we approved the apartment complex from Legacy near Carson Street and Hawthorne. And where it's sensible to develop, because we know there is a housing shortage, and you will see some of that where it makes sense. And along with revenue generating, I think there are some people who may be aware and some may not be as aware, is international relationships. Recently in February, we had a delegation from our sister city of Kashua. We have a wonderful 50-year relationship with the city, and we're going to continue to build and strengthen that relationship. And past January, we had the mayor of Hwaseong, Korea, visit us, and he was very delighted coming into our city. He stayed at a hotel outside of the city of Torrance. One of the things he said to me is, it's different when I come into the city of Torrance. I just want the community to know that this is unscripted from a mayor from another country coming in our city who actually said that to me. And I know he was staying somewhere more near downtown LA and Koreatown, and coming to Torrance, he said, yeah, I see a difference in your community and I really like it. And he was ready to sign the Friendship City agreement with our city, but he is waiting for us to visit his city. The city of Hwaseong is a very young city. It's about 20 years old, and it is the home of Samsung, Kia, and Hyundai. So the opportunity presents itself that as we develop this Friendship City relationship, the focus would be on, is there opportunity for international economic investment in the city of Torrance with high-end business, high-tech, high-paying jobs. Recently, we also signed a couple of Friendship City relationship with two cities in Taiwan. One is Tainan, which as you see on the chart here, and there's another one in Zhanghua. And those two cities in Torrance are another opportunity, not only to develop Friendship City, but the key component where we're focusing on is economic development in the future. Tainan hosts Taiwan Semiconductor with their 4 nanometer processing. And there's a lot of opportunity. I met with over 20 companies while I was in Taiwan who share with me their features and benefits and their interest in establishing a footprint in the city of Torrance. What does that mean? We have visitors coming into our city. Our city is always competing with our local cities for the same customer base, whether it's in the South Bay or LA County. So we can introduce another flock of visitors to the city of Torrance to stay at our hotels, go to our restaurants, shop at our shops, and potentially establish their international footprint here with higher paying jobs. That's a win-win for both of us. In conclusion, you can see a lot of focus I've been talking about. I'm going to wrap up my portion. Public safety is number one, because if it's not safe, no one wants to visit us, no one wants to eat here, no one wants to shop here. We keep that top line. But to really fund all the quality of life issues that our residents want, we need revenue. So there's a lot of ideas we're churning through our head is how do we generate revenue? And the number one revenue generation in our city is still sales tax. And we need people coming in our city. We need them to shop, we need them to dine, we need them to stay at our hotels. And It's one of the safest community, best place to live in the nation. We have a lot of opportunities here. I encourage every one of us, not only the city employees elected, the residents who are with us, every one of us, when we're going out and about, look at ourselves as ambassadors for the city of Torrance. Market our city, protect our city, keep our cities clean and safe, help each other out. It is noticeable. Thank you for this time.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I'll turn it over to City Manager Aram Chaparyan.
Thank you, Sheila. Good morning, Mayor, Chief, Captain, community members. Appreciate this opportunity. One of our goals has been to, over the years, we've heard from community members some frustration about level of accessibility of government, transparency, deliberation in the budget process. And then one thing we learned from in the post-pandemic world is leveraging technology, and the transitioning from Zoom to Teams gives us an opportunity to bring our message to the people. And Mayor, appreciate you starting us off. Sheila and team, thank you for leading the conversation. Looking ahead, keep Torrance moving forward. As Mayor said, we started off in a very difficult 3-year period, but over that course of time, we've seen Torrance really get on a strong economic footing. We've seen a rebound in our sales tax, a consistent and strong housing market. Torrance is very desirable for the conditions that the Mayor mentioned: good schools, good public safety, our proximity to the airport and the port and the beach, the mall. That's what makes Torrance unique. We've seen major industrial and commercial development, and I'll go more into that in future slides. We also have noticed with the chip shortage issues, relinquishing a much more vibrant auto industry, rebounding, and also them transitioning more electrical vehicles. That's also creating opportunities. And then, as Mayor mentioned, the new restaurants at Del Amo Fashion Center. Now, about finding balance in a budget. In my career, I've seen 2 major downturns with the recession as well as the pandemic. We like to be proactive in planning ahead. What goes up will go down, vice versa. So, as such, we are being proactive in preparing for multi-year negotiations with our employee groups. Police and fire contracts will expire end of this calendar year. Our general employees, miscellaneous employees, are next June. So as such, we're just like any company out there. We're struggling with vacancies across the city, but we're working through HR and the departments. We are proactively filling those vacancies. We reached a point nearly 300 vacancies. We're competing with the retail sector. We're competing with other municipal agencies and the private sector. And in an environment where the pension policies have changed, employees are less likely to have a 20, 30-year career like the individuals that you see on the screen. Next slide, please. So as far as the major community projects that we're working with, some of you may have, as Mayor mentioned, there's several major developments. Gable House redevelopment is for the Gable Bowl. That project, once completed, will have, it was approved at the Planning Commission in August of 22. It will have 218 apartment units, 12,000 square feet of commercial. And within the housing units, there's 17 affordable units. And as you know, or you may not know, California requires cities to identify capacity to build. In the case of Torrance, that's about 5,000 units. It's a combination of both market rate housing, workforce housing, and low-income housing. So that's one of the areas where the mayor and council will be focused on our land use policies. The next project we have is the Torrance Gateway project, and that's the former Toyota site. It was acquired by Ceres Regis Group in 2017. Between 2018 and 2020, the first phase consists of 3 light industrial buildings of totaling 410,000 square feet. The second phase was completed at 650,000 square feet. And in the current phase, which was entitled in 2022, another 730,000 square feet will come back. And what that means, we'll be bringing back jobs to Torrance, good paying jobs that can help sustain our economy. And the last 2 parcels on 190th are still in the preliminary planning stages. The last project I will cover is, if you've driven northbound on Madrona towards Prairie and 190th is the Torrance Industrial Exchange. That's the old BD soil site. And that project is, once completed, well, almost completed, 430,000 square feet, 2 buildings. And what I'm hearing is a significant interest in the community. In regards to priority funding requests, with the federal government being able to appropriate funding to direct funding to cities, we have been very successful in securing funding to support our 3290 tiny home village. However, we still continue, and as well as our state partners, we're seeking support for temporary housing, broadband infrastructure, the revitalization of downtown, Columbia Park turf replacement. We also have collaborative reform with DOJ, Department of Justice, related to our police department. And then the major issue facing Torrance is the extension of the C line, which is scheduled in front of the Metro Board in June. And the City of Torrance is advocating for our right-of-way preferred alternative versus the Hawthorne Boulevard. I'm sure you've received material at your residence or business. We touched on public safety and quality of life. We continue to proactively work to give police chief and the captain and department flexibility, both in police and fire, in hiring and training and recruiting. And we're pleased to announce, while we had 40-some vacancies, we hope to bring those in half, and Captain will speak more on that. We are hiring, so if you or your family members are interested in local government, have them check out torranceca.gov jobs. We have opportunities in every department in the city. And then in the next few months, we will be bringing the downtown housing corridor study for mayor and council consideration. Next slide, please. And as I wrap up, my favorite slide in this deck is about all the different technology that we're able to leverage to get our message out and to connect with our community. If you haven't heard us in one social media outlet or branding, then we clearly are not doing our job. But I hope you're aware that we have the My Torrance CA app. At the end of this presentation, there's a slide with the QR code. I ask that you have your cell phones ready so you can go directly to the page where you can connect to all these apps. Sign up for Torrance alerts for emergency alerts and road closure notifications. Please visit our website, and the easiest is torranceca.gov. If you click on Contact Us and you scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, there's a actual PDF, actual hyperlink of the QR code that we're going to show you. We've also are leveraging social media on our city cable. We have our Torrance Today at 4 p.m. every day on Facebook. The White Torrance campaign is if you just type White Torrance, this is a GIS interface, which allows companies, both existing and future, to have a single source of city information of defining what makes Torrance unique. We also set up a trending in Torrance. As we know, there's definitely hot topics in our community, and trending in Torrance is a single depository of hot topics such as airport noise, coyotes, sidewalk vending, homelessness, cannabis shops, where individuals can go and obtain the specific information. And lastly, we also set up a rumors page because in the age of social media, individuals may tend to hear from various sources some rumors, and we set the facts straight with our rumors page, and that's also on the website. We're always available, so please feel free to reach out. And I encourage all of you to please share this recording with your friends and family. I will make a plug. We do have one tomorrow as well, in case you're the only one that wants to participate. Thank you for this opportunity. Turn it back to you, Sheila.
Thank you, Aram. Tomorrow's, just to piggyback off that, tomorrow's meeting is at 6 p.m. So it's post-work hours if that works better for others. All right. Once again, my name is Sheila Poisson. I'm the finance director here at the City of Torrance. And I think we can all agree that it's been a wild couple of years since the pandemic. Really, in order to show you how far we've come since then, we do have to take it back to 2020. In that year, with, as we all have experienced, retail and restaurants forced to close their doors, our revenue base here at the city was severely impacted, and we were required to utilize about $18 million of our reserves, deteriorating our reserves down to a balance of, as the mayor had mentioned earlier, $581,000. So in the following years, in fiscal 21 and fiscal 22, several mitigating measures were approved by our city council. included budget cuts of $18 million, a hiring freeze, increased cost recovery levels for our services, and Measure SST, 1/2 cent sales tax measure. These measures, coupled with one-time monies and federal assistance, allowed for the city to rebuild our reserves to 44.7 million as of June 2022, just now meeting our 20% minimum threshold. Some of the one-time funding, in case you wanted to know, that we received are 1.8 million in CARES Act, 9.7 million we've identified in capital projects that we freed up, reimbursement from our transit fund for the land acquisition for the Regional Transit Center, and lastly, of course, a big assist from the federal government, 24.1 million from the American Rescue Plan Act. Measure SST, in June 2022, Torrance voters approved Measure SST. I apologize for that typo. A 1/2 cent increase to sales tax, estimated to generate at that time $18 million in annual revenue. As we are closing out our first fiscal year, which will be 9 months of revenue, we're anticipating that we'll bring in roughly around $22 to $23 million in revenue per year, and we've adjusted our budget to reflect that number. Prior to this measure being approved, City Council adopted a fiscal 23 budget that included $10.4 million in cuts to police and fire personnel. Thankfully, the passage of this measure allowed us to restore those cuts, and our police and fire departments were made whole. We didn't have to make any changes there. Another note here, I already touched on earlier, is that prior to Measure SST, the non-public safety departments had already cut 12% of their budgets, and those cuts will remain permanent as we've identified those efficiencies. As I mentioned earlier, when we had brought forth the proposal for Measure SST to our voters, these are the major categories that we had proposed that the funding would go to. Quality of life, which included funding towards both police and fire, homelessness response efforts, as we know that's a growing and long-term issue that we'll have to address here. Fiscal sustainability, to get our finances in a place where we can be nimble, we could be be able to respond to future emergencies or economic downturns. Deferred maintenance and community services. So we do have a lot of aging infrastructure, so we've allocated some of the funds towards that. And perhaps to also enhance some of our existing community programs. And lastly, emergency responsiveness, including cybersecurity upgrades, because we know that is also a growing issue. Okay, so next steps, as I had mentioned earlier, with Measure SST, we do anticipate that we will be receiving $22 to $23 million. The City Council appointed Measure SST Citizens Oversight Committee just last night. So it is a 7-member committee in which we'll be meeting roughly 3 times a year to review and ensure that the funding is being utilized as adopted by City Council and to benefit City of Torrance residents only. The duties of this committee, as I'd mentioned, to benefit to make sure that the funds are being used to benefit the community, specifically by reviewing the Measure SST Fund's annual operating budget that's adopted by the council, reviewing semi-annual reports from city staff each year on the revenues and expenditures of the fund, review the third-party financial statement audit of the Measure SST Fund, advise the City Council on issues identified, if any, and perform any other action that may be directed by the City Council. So next steps for this committee, we'll probably be setting up a meeting with them to give them a brief background, next expectations. The expectation going forward is that they will be meeting at pretty much the same cadence as our existing Finance and Governmental Operations Committee. We have been making significant financial strides since 2020. For example, in November, just this past November, S&P Global improved the city's credit rating from a AA negative, that's a negative outlook, to a AA stable outlook. We've also improved our ranking on the state auditor's high-risk cities dashboard from high risk. If you all remember, we were ranked 4 on that list back in 2020 to moderate risk this year. So an improvement there, and we do anticipate further improvement in several categories when the next year's report comes out as well, which we anticipate to be in late October of this year. The negative fund balance in our fleet services fund will be resolved this fiscal year. So that's one thing off our list, or one, I should say, area of focus that we'll be resolving this year. And lastly, our unassigned fund balance, which is really our reserves, is anticipated to reach a balance of $58.3 million at the end of this fiscal year. I guess to piggyback off this, the 21.5%, 2023 really is a year of firsts for Torrance in the finance realm. This year will be the first year that the city will exceed this 20% minimum threshold since, let me go back, since 2005. In 2023 was also the first year since 2015 that our 5-year average revenue growth exceeds our average expenditure growth. I should say this is also the first year that the finance department received the Governmental Finance Officers Association Award for making changes to our budget document to make it more transparent, easy to read. And also, this is the first year that City Council will be seeing a proposed budget utilizing a zero-based budget. It's that effort wasn't historically done in the city of Torrance. Our team and all the departments went through that effort and identified almost $4 million in non-wage expenditure savings for the next upcoming budget. So I can confidently say that we are heading in the right direction. Though we are heading in a positive direction, these are listed here, multiple areas that we are tracking closely. Our self-insurance fund being the biggest one. Right now it sits at a negative $58 million balance, fund balance, I apologize, which basically means we have obligations and liabilities in excess of the cash that we have in that fund. So we're monitoring the cash balances in that fund, not only in that fund, but in the general fund. For example, the general fund making up over 70% of our citywide operations, but only 15% of our cash balance. So as we build up our cash balance, our reserves, we're also building up our cash balance. So that works hand in hand. As the city manager had touched on, we're monitoring our labor trends. We aren't the only city that has been challenged in attracting talent, but I think we are making good headway there by our labor relations team really working closely with our labor groups and really coming to agreements for long-term contracts here, upcoming long-term contracts. And then lastly, we're always monitoring our pension and OPEB liability, adjusting our forecasts as more information comes on investment returns. And annually, we are reporting to the community and offering a workshop once those returns are made public in June. We'll come back in around October, November, our first quarter. I think it goes without really saying that we have been maintaining sensible fiscal practices. We're continue to focus on rebuilding reserves. Some of our Measure SST money is dedicated towards that, and correcting negative fund balance in our self-insurance fund. We also are monitoring, of course, economic indicators such as CPI, the federal fund rates, unemployment rates, consumer confidence. All that is considered in developing the budget. With that, I would like to encourage you to attend our first budget hearing this year. It'll be held on May 9th during the regularly scheduled city council meeting. And with that, I will turn it over to Assistant Chief Adam Brown to give you some updates on the fire department.
Thank you, Sheila. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, just to dovetail off on Sheila, we're really excited on the fire side as to what's coming down the pipe. We're growing as a department. We're making sure that we're continuing to provide good service for the community. On this slide, we can see that this year we've submitted our ISO, our Insurance Service Office survey. What that does is it looks at a gamut of things and it basically spits out a number. And for the last 20 or so years, we've been ranked as a class 1. We're ISO class 1. We're also CPSI accredited. Every 5 years, we have to go through an accreditation process. It's a 5-year process. It's ongoing. We look at many different things. Both of these surveys, as well as the CPSI accreditation, requires many hours of us doing research, reaching out to the community. We've built a standards of cover, community risk assessment, self-assessment manual, and it's really just to make sure that we're on the progressive path to provide better services for the community. So as we look at this, the ISO rating takes into account several different factors: water supply, manpower, tools and equipment, things like that. And so we are a class 1. We're really proud of being a class 1. Not many departments are a class 1, and in fact, we're one of 25 departments in California to both be ISO class 1 as well as an accredited agency. So in 2024, we will complete the re-accreditation process. Again, it takes quite a while to build that out, but we have people coming in from Florida that will do a complete survey of how we do business, how we're continually improving our services, as well as monitoring the things that we have internally, such as policies and procedures, and making sure those are in alignment with our department standard across the country. Next slide, please. So this is a great slide. We started our BLS transportation program several years ago. We just completed the 2nd year into our 3rd now. What we found is that if we didn't start the BLS transportation program, we would have been without ambulances on many of our calls. McCormick and CARE, they've been inundated, so much so that they pulled out of the interfacility transport business. They're not transporting patients to and from hospitals because they couldn't keep up with the emergencies. Coming out of COVID, we've seen a spike in our call volume. And because we stayed ahead of that and we built out our own BLS transportation program, we have ambulances that are responding to our calls. We're not like the other agencies that are dependent on McCormick, not to badmouth McCormick, but they were so widespread, they couldn't keep up with the call volume. Luckily, our ambulance have always been available, whether it's by BLS transportation or we do have some paramedic transportation capabilities. So we do have 6 ambulances in service. We also have an APOT unit. APOT came into effect, especially during COVID. It means ambulance patient offload time. In essence, it is an ambulance with one person on it that can go to a hospital that would relieve the crews that are stuck holding the patient in the hallway because of bed availability. If you look at Torrance Memorial, Little Company Marion, Harbor General, fantastic facilities, but even they get inundated, whether it's through not having the staffing or maybe it's just a busy night. What happens is the backlog of patients, they end up having to wait. And these aren't patients that we can just put in a chair. We want to monitor the patients. The APOT unit has been so key in making sure that they can go to one of the hospitals, maybe where there's a backup, and then they can take over for a 2-person ambulance so that they can get back out on the streets and then respond to emergencies. And so we're going to be looking at improving that, I believe, on one of the other slides on how we're going to improve that program. Because like the last bullet says, we're getting an increased amount of calls. And so we're going to have to respond to that before it gets out of hand. And then we end up in a situation like our neighboring agencies where we don't have ambulances. Next slide, please. So we did have a budget modification. The program modifications that we had put in for were 2 additional ambulances. What this is going to do is add resiliency. When you think about EMTs or firefighters, we need something to ride in and something that can transport our patients in. If you see us on calls, sometimes you'll see an ambulance that has a box on it. And then the standard of transportation that our paramedics used to ride in, you can kind of see it in the slide. It's the smaller one next to the Suburban. It's kind of in the background of the slide there. That doesn't have transport capabilities. So we bought 2 more ambulances to provide resiliency. We're always trying to find that balance between resiliency and efficiency. And so I think the 2 ambulances are going to do us really well, again, with the number of increased calls. We've also increased our ambulance operators. We need to put bodies in those ambulances. Currently, we have peak staffed vehicles. They're assigned to BLS 92 and BLS 94. When we track the data of the calls that we go on, we can see when the best time is to have the ambulances on duty for those peak staff days. What we're going to do is essentially double the amount of peak staffed people we have. So we're going to have better coverage throughout the city, especially during that time. It's generally from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. or so that you can, that's when most people are awake, but that's when most of our calls are happening. And so if we double the amount of peak staff vehicles we have during those windows, we're going to be able to better respond to the emergencies. We're also going to add 2 field training officers or APOT units. Currently, our APOT is it's not a 24-hour vehicle. It is during peak staff times. By adding 2 field training officer positions, we can now have an APOT unit that is a 4896. They will be on a 24-hour schedule. They'll be on the same schedule as the firefighters and paramedics, as well as the current 24-hour BLS schedules. So we have the peak staff vehicles that are from essentially 8 to 8, and then we have our 24-hour ambulances. So having that APOT now become a 24-hour resource, it's going to allow us 24-hour coverage for them to respond to a hospital if they need to make relief to free up one of the BLS units. Next slide, please. So CERT training is back, triple exclamation point. So I oversee CERT now that I'm kind of in EMS and CRRD. I was an instructor in CERT, but CERT training is back. It's a phenomenal course. It's open to the public. It's free to the public. Even though I think it says on there that it's a few dollars, I think that's an administrative fee that you get back. But it's completely free. You spend 3 days with our personnel training on how to essentially during an emergency when our resources are completely depleted, how you can help your family and your neighbors get through the tough times. What we found is when we schedule a CERT training, we have to cancel it because we have low enrollment. So we encourage everyone to sign up. And then we're partnering with the city manager's office so that after you're done with CERT, we're going to try and build it out to where we have different areas that CERT can respond to and then really join up as a CERT team. So you can go from dealing with your family, your neighbor, and then actually helping within the community. So more to come on that. Coming out of COVID, it's a little bit slower to really gain traction, but that's something to look forward to. The Safer Torrance Initiative. The My Torrance app is phenomenal. There's a lot of things that we can do as a fire department that we want to engage with the public. One of the biggest things are just creating content that we can send out just to have. That if you have, if you're on the app or if you're interested in how we do things, there's going to be a tab for first aid, hands-only CPR, stop the bleed. We've been talking a lot about public access defibrillators so that, we're looking at where within the city would be best to put the AEDs so that if there was a cardiac emergency, some civilian or even a employee can grab the AED and then they can put it on that person. We're looking into that. We're looking for funding. We're looking for high traffic areas where it would be best serving the community. And then fire extinguisher training. And then this is going to take a tremendous amount of work to build it out, put it on the app or put it on some platform where it's accessible to everyone, whether it's audio visual or some sort of interactive training. This is going to be hopefully an integration into the My Torrance CA app, but we're looking to launch that in 2024. Next slide, please. And then our recruitment. So I don't want to jinx it, but we're 9 weeks into our 10-week tower, and we have 13 recruits starting, and we still have 13 today. Talking to the training cadre, they're actually doing really well. 13 in and 13 out is, I'm sure, anyone who's been through some sort of training that's really hard to come by. So this group, the training cadre and the group of individuals who are going through it, they're expected to graduate on April 21st, but they're doing really well. 7 of the 13 actually came from our internal development process. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of our Grow Our Own program. That's really when we can capture the younger individuals from right around the freshman age, like 13 or 14 or so, they become a fire explorer, and then they have a few different routes that they can take. But one of the best ways that we can push them through to gain exposure to the fire service, as well as get a feel for our culture, we can understand how they are as an employee, is to go from explorer to an ambulance operator, and then maybe even to a cadet. We've done that in the past when we have members sponsored through paramedic school. We can bring them on as a cadet, and then they transfer right into the training academy. We found that this gives us a good look at them as an individual, as an employee, but it also allows them the opportunity to really mend well with the current firefighters on the floor. And so it's proven pretty well. I think about half of each class we've had since we started the ambulance operator program have been AOs. So half of each recruit class has been AOs. So it's been pretty good. Next slide, please. And then with that, I'll pass it over to PD. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Captain Jimmy Tederiga. Next slide, please. All right, overview. We're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about community safety, police recruitment, and community engagement. Next slide, please. So overall, our crime in the city of Torrance is down 22%. As you can see here, we have a slight uptick with residential burglaries as well as robberies. As far as assaults and auto theft, they're down. We attribute the fact that we embrace 21st century policing. In particular, there's 6 pillars of 21st century policing, and the 4th pillar talks about community policing and crime reduction. Community policing emphasizes working with our neighbors and residents to co-produce public safety. Also, Robert Peel, back in the 1800s, said that the police are the public and the public are the police. So we really believe in that police department's committed to working with the community to identify problems and collaborate on implementing solutions that produce meaningful results. Next slide. So our recruitment efforts nationwide in law enforcement, recruitment and hiring is a challenge. We'll get with that and try to be able to get our numbers up. We have taken on various recruitment initiatives, such as housing and childcare. That's going to be $1,000 a month for 2 years. Discover TPD. This is a pilot program offering travel and lodging to out-of-state candidates to visit the city of Torrance and the police department. This program would provide a unique learning experience for out-of-state candidates to discover TPD and the city of Torrance in person. We also have in the passenger seat, this is a partnership with local colleges such as Cal State Dominguez Hill and El Camino College. Students can participate in a ride-along with personnel, sworn and civilian. And we believe this program would provide a unique learning experience for the students. And then we have guaranteed special assignment. This is where the officers complete patrol after 2 or 3 years, and then they would work in an assignment outside of patrol. Next slide, please. Our community engagement. So we have taken on a new strategic plan, and this is the IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, Building Trust Campaign, or Trust Building Campaign. We will implement the key policies and promising practices over the next 3 years. And these policies and practices represent 6 key focus areas that are essential to enhancing the trust and the collaboration between communities and police. And I encourage you all to check out our website, which has this trust building campaign on there. Of these, of the trust building campaign, there's 6 key focus areas. One of which is bias-free policing. This is to establish a policy on bias-free policing, which we have. Use of force, to work on a national policy and to provide regular training, in particular for de-escalation, and we have been doing so. Leadership and culture, a policy that recognizes the sanctity of life, which we have implemented. Recruitment, hiring, a guardian mindset rather than the warrior mindset. Victim services, working with our mental health professionals, as well as substance abuse programs that we have on our website. And then community relations, having clear timely complaint process, which we've implemented, and then also looking at doing a recurring survey for the community. We believe that this will create a positive community-police partnership, promote safe, effective interactions, create the strategies to prevent and reduce crime, and improve the well-being and quality of life for all. Next slide, please. So as far as community engagement, we have started our Volunteers in Policing program, VIP. It's got a, what do you call it, a nice acronym. I like the acronym. It's involving our detectives, where we have VIPs that work alongside our detectives, helping with investigations. New programs that we're looking at with this VIP program and we're going to be implementing soon is our fight team, right along with our police department, officers in parks, at beach, and special events. VIP on patrol. The VIPs will walk foot beats in parks, downtown districts, and other special events. The business walk. The VIPs will walk around the mall area during holiday deployments and special events and other areas around the Hawthorne corridor. Mounted unit. The VIP's mounted unit will assist with special events such as Armed Forces Day Parade, 4th of July, and the Turkey Trot. Next slide. That's it. Just want to thank you all for attending, and we are here to serve you, and as our chief, and as we all say, it's our job together. So thank you all.
Thank you, Captain. And as City Manager mentioned earlier, here's a QR code that you can easily just use your cell phone to turn on your camera, and it'll link you to the app and all these alerts, and where you can see kind of what we're doing on a daily basis here in Torrance. I know you've heard a lot from some of these major departments on what we're doing. Before I open it up for questions, I did notice some people have some scheduling conflicts, came in a little bit later. We are hosting another session, this same session, the same slides, tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. Hoping to be flexible with those that do work during regular 9 to 5 hours. And we also recorded this session. So if you missed a part of the beginning, we'll be posting it to our website. So you can catch that then as well. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and open it to questions. If you have any questions, if you could please drop it into the chat, and our moderators will assist in reading those out.
Hi, Sheila. So there are a few questions in the chat. The first one, they wanted to have a breakdown of the accounting in the reserves. I think this was gone over, but the $40 million reserves.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again? Just so I think the question is, what is the breakdown of the $4 million in reserves?
Yeah, exactly. And the $40 million in reserves.
Okay, got it. So the reserves, the reason why it's called unassigned fund balances is because it's not allocated towards anything. It allows Torrance to be flexible to use it towards really any sort of emergency if needed. There is, I believe it's $6 million that City Council, in the very first year of the pandemic, when we were starting to rebuild this back, they had approved to allocate it towards what we call economic anomaly. Which really is the intent of reserves. We could ask them to shift more than $6 million in there of that 44, kind of allocating it towards just that alone. That could be done in the future, but for now, 6 million of it is for economic anomaly. The remainder of it is for general use.
Thank you. Okay, another question in the chat. They said that they were confused and asked, cash balances fund sounds like it's in the red, but talking about building it up. So I think they may have just been confused when going over cash balances fund.
I think they were referring to the slide where we were talking about areas of focus. There was a bullet in there that said cash balances by fund. What I had meant by that bullet is that as we are building up our reserves to get closer to that low risk area, or what the state auditor considers low risk, well, it goes hand in hand with the cash balances by fund. The reason why we kind of call that out as a separate item is because we know that sure, we have over 200 million in cash, but a majority of that is not with the general fund. So it sits in several funds such as enterprise, fiduciary. It's what we call pooled cash. So right now, I believe the general fund's cash balance is only 15%, represents only 15%, while the general fund's expenditures represent over 60 to 70% of the citywide activities. So ideally, that cash balance should match the level of activity ratio proportion. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Sheila. Another question in the chat, I think it's for police. It says, isn't police staffing more a factor of salary? What percentage of 40 vacancies is due to negative attrition over the last year?
Yeah, good afternoon. I don't think I know our vacancies are not due to salary issues. There's no salary issues that are causing our vacancies. It's what I discussed earlier. It's the interest in law enforcement is not as abundant as it was a couple of years ago. So we're facing that just as it is nationwide. Law enforcement agencies nationwide are having issues recruiting and hiring police officers. So it's not a salary issue at all.
We have that, if I may add also to what Captain said, we also are experiencing an exodus because of attrition due to retirements. With not to give belittle, but the California pension system changed the formula for retirement. The classic members were 3% at 50. So you could retire as early as 50. And for individuals who started in their early 20s, that's caused the pressure and also the exodus. While the new employees hired today will have to work to 57 to earn 2.7. So you can see that's also going to have some impacts. It's a very demanding job. What we're working on is trying to one of the chief's initiatives is 30 by 30, and that's to hire 30 female officers. And a lot of our future recruitment starts in middle schools and high schools, but it'll take time to catch up. Right now, with the support of mayor and council, we've been very proactive in offering a very aggressive, lucrative package to entice lateral officers, because Torrance is so well positioned in our size and scope. There's lots of upward mobility opportunities and variety of assignments, which is enticing to someone who may be a bit mid to entry in their larger agencies wanting to come to Torrance. And we're also seeing individuals in a post-pandemic environment where they want to live in the community they serve. So a lot of folks that are native to South Bay or Torrance have a preference to lateral to us versus drive through another agency. Hope that helps.
Thank you. Yes, great point, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And the last question we have in the chat right now says, how does the city differentiate quality of life versus public safety? Because the sides seem to overlay them. So that may mean the beginning of the presentation.
If I may, I can add that. I'll turn it to Mayor. The city, through our strategic plan process that's conducted every 10 years, we conduct a community survey. This is a statistically valid community survey of residents, a sample of about 500, as well as Torrance businesses. An overwhelming majority of those responses that we get from the community ranks public safety as number one on their list. And then there's all the reasons Mayor mentioned with the business community environment. If you want to expand on that point, Mayor. But we were planning on conducting another survey in the post-pandemic world. But that's where we draw a lot of association. And there's also a correlation for the business community. I think Mayor can expand further.
I'll jump in a little bit. One of the reasons my wife and I moved into the city of Torrance many years ago was for safety, location, and good schools. I think the way I would do it in a large umbrella, I'll put public safety as number one. You could say, arguably, the question does make some sense. What is quality of life? What's public safety? So where do we put homelessness? Homelessness in some folks is quality of life, especially the homeless population who are uncooperative. That is we call it quality of life. Or you have an illegal sidewalk vendor who is out there operating without a health permit or a business license, and that's in some way a quality of life. Is that what causes you to want to come to live in Torrance? It's somewhat a quality of life. What is the attraction? And to me, a lot of time is those are the features and benefits. In the business world, we call it features and benefits, and maybe in the city of Torrance, we call it quality of life. What makes you want to live here? What makes you want to shop here? And those are, in some ways, they're in the bigger umbrella of quality of life. When you need emergency, do you get the treatment and response? It's certain quality of life. So quality of life and public safety are very intertwined. I hope that helps.
Are there any other questions, Crystal?
Looks like one more just came in the chat. Traffic flow, traffic density isn't quality of life. I'm not sure what the question is referring to, but I think they're referring to the traffic density in the city.
I could take a crack at it and then I'll let someone else. Traffic density is always an issue, especially when we talk about development and where is the right place for development. There are certain places in the city where it's already heavily populated and lots of traffic. I'll say, for example, Hawthorne Boulevard, very heavily. And for some, we live our lives. If you have a profession that you need to drive to downtown LA, you probably plan that day on when the least traffic. So I would say if you're constantly in bumper to bumper, that's probably, in my book, a lower quality of life index. And I think that's how I interpret it. I mean, if you want a high quality of life with respect to traffic, you almost never have a bumper to bumper. And I think we look into that. I think what is the right balance? So with respect to development, if that's where the question is really tailored at, every project comes to us, we try to find the best well-balanced solution. Understand sometimes it's not perfect. We're just trying to find what is the best balanced solution. I'll let anyone else jump in.
Yeah, I'll say something in regards from the police department's perspective. When it comes to traffic, we always think about the 3 E's, and that is enforcement, education, and engineering. We definitely want to make sure that traffic is flowing, but it's safe. That it's safe for everybody out in the community. So those are the 3 things we look at it from a police department perspective.
And if I may, we're also continuing to be at the forefront of smart city initiatives. Back to the engineering, how do we communicate with the new future of vehicles having the capacity to interact with GIS and GPS, and there's initiatives where we have automatic license plate readers for crime purposes, but there's technology now that camera can do sort of a dual purpose. And recently we're looking at a real-time crime center, which could be tied to traffic congestion, and having our traffic engineers in real time being able to divert. So we imagine a room with the screens, the police department having access, and if there's a collision at a major intersection, we can proactively send out Torrance alerts to the geographic area or to the community, divert our police and fire resources, and in real time. Another technology I know that the fire service is looking at is a notification if you're driving and you come on a crash or a road closure, you can get real-time notification on your dashboard. So we're continuing to monitor emerging technology and leverage it to the point possible to help alleviate some of the congestion concerns that we hear.
Let me jump in, Aram. I think last week we did a ribbon cutting at the corner of Pacific Coast Highway
Yes.
and Hawthorne.
Absolutely.
That's, that's old school, but we just widen the intersection, give you a unique right turn lane. In some way, hopefully, the residents will feel that that's a little bit of a quality of life improvement in that intersection.
And the 182nd and Crenshaw is coming up. It's the Caltrans where you can avoid having to make that right turn on 182nd. You can loop around to the southbound, right on actually to the northbound without having to make that right turn. And then we'll have a dedicated right turn going northbound Crenshaw. So there's a lot of, maybe in the future, Sheila, will invite the Public Works to this conversation, but this is, it gives us a good preview. Those
good.
type of concerns our residents have and businesses. Good
Speaking
question.
of Public Works, Aram, looks like you might have the next one.
Thank you. Yeah, the next one is also public works related. What is the plan for street pothole repairs? For example, I guess there's one on Anza Avenue between PCH and Del Amo Boulevard.
I asked the very question yesterday to our Public Works Director in regards to weeds as well. Not only, I mean, we have abundance of water, which is wonderful. They filled up Diamond Valley and there's 250% of snowpack. The trade-off is obviously we have crews working overtime. We have crews working on weekends, and we also are bringing in additional outsourced resources to help us fill the potholes. But I'll follow up specifically to the location. And we're also dealing with a lot of overgrown weeds. So our code enforcement through friendly education is reaching out to various property owners and reminding them of their obligation to maintain our parkways and our properties in the conditions that are expected in Torrance. But rest assured, if you see them, we see them, and we were using our resources. Another pitch for My Torrance app, if you come across a pothole, please report it to us under a service request, and we'll respond. Thank you.
Hey, Aram, I don't see any questions in the chat room, but I'll give you a verbal one, which I think maybe you could speak to. I'm surprised no one asked. Can you address some of the sidewalk vending situation and what the city plan to do about it?
Sure. We've seen an explosion. California state law decriminalized sidewalk vending. And when you speak of sidewalk vending, what folks typically will recall is either a food and beverage operation, i.e. a shawarma stand or taco, or I'm not trying to pick on any cuisine. These are all out there. And then you have the fruit stands with the rainbow umbrellas. It's not illegal per se. However, those operators are required to obtain both a business license from the city of Torrance as well as a food permit from LA County. When we come across through our code enforcement efforts, the community has expressed concerns. Majority of these operators do not have either license. So under the current state law, only the County of LA and state health officers are allowed to remove the food. And remove the food means being able to, because it's not certified and due to public safety health concerns, they can literally put that food in a trash. So, however, because of lack of resources from LA County, we're only able to do a task force operation, which is very labor intensive. It requires our police officers. Sometimes these vendors get agitated. It requires our even fire inspectors in some instances where they have an open fire. We have code enforcement. These individuals typically don't give us their ID. They're dropped off by an operator and they're picked up later on. But in a proactive manner, again, we've partnered with LA County to sign a memorandum of understanding to be able to bring dedicated staffing health workers from LA County to join our city task force on a daily operation so that we can remove this unsafe product from our streets. And we think that'll make an impact. And again, we're also using this interaction as an opportunity to share all the ways someone can become legally permitted vendor in the city of Torrance. And if you go to our trending in Torrance, we have a dedicated section that explains this. I always use that chance to pitch our communication tools. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you so much. There are no more questions in the chat.
Great.
All right. I think we spoke too soon. Was there another question or was that just a comment?
Oh, something just popped up. How did the jokes between Torrance law enforcement make it into the public sphere?
This, Captain, this may be related to the LA Times articles and the texting. It's through an investigation by the DA's office.
Yeah, there's laws and things that, basically they're called POBAR, rules and laws that, prohibit us from talking openly about it, but, what if people have seen in the newspaper and the discussion amongst, maybe some of the people in the community has been some of the negative text messages that, I could assure everybody that the police department, took it very seriously and handled it, with, administrative investigations and basically, handled the matter, and is moving on. And now we're in a cleansing, turning us around type formation, working collaboratively with the DOJ. There's also various laws out there, SB2 decertification, that we're going to embrace to make us a better police department. So there's a lot of things we're working on. That the Chiefs Advisory Board, we're bringing that on. So we are here committed to the citizens and to turning us around. So thank you.
Alexis, if that's the last, is that the last question?
Yes, that is the last question.
Okay, all right. Well, I just wanted to thank the mayor, Team Torrance members here for their time, and also the community for joining us and participating in this process. If you do know of any friends and family members that would be interested in hearing these important updates, again, I'll mention that we'll have the same presentation available tomorrow at 6 p.m. And we'll be posting both these slides and this presentation to our website. So thank you once again. Have a great rest of the day and hope to see you in the future.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mayor. See you, gentlemen. Bye, community.